I like to both begin and end my Bio 182 course by talking about my personal scientific hero, Dr. Jane Goodall. She turns 90 this year in 2024. I vividly remember reading about her in the pages of those bright yellow National Geographic magazines as a young boy in the early 1980s when I would just dream about those wild places that still could be found on planet Earth. I had the incredible opportunity to hear her speak and quickly visit with her about 20 years ago now, and it filled me, like so many that she interacts with a sense of hope. To me, Jane Goodall is the embodiment of a scientist. She is the quintessential wildlife ecologist, all that we should strive to be as scientists. Born in 1934 in London, England, to modest means, Jane's dad famously gave her a stuffed chimpanzee named Jubilee that she still keeps on her dresser to this day instead of that standard teddy bear. From very early on, Jane dreamed of studying African wildlife. But this was the 1940s and the 50s, and it was exceedingly difficult for most women to engage in scientific pursuits during this time. It was said that women were better suited to becoming secretaries, certainly not field biologists. And yet, as she discusses later in her life, it was her mother who always believed in her and encouraged those crazy dreams. Undeterred by her detractors, and with little more than a pair of binoculars and her trusted field notebook, Jane leaves England and embarks for Africa in 1957 at just 23 years old. Eventually, Jane is able to secure that secretary job, but with the famous paleoanthropologist, Dr. Louis Leakey, who at that time was busy recovering what are to become famous Australopithecine fossils in Kenya. Dr. Leakey, seeing the incredible potential in Jane and recognizing that the study of extant great apes like chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, orangutans would surely shed light on these early hominids that he was finding fossils of, Dr. Leakey raises funds and sends Jane to Gombe Stream National Park in July 1960 when she's just 26 years old. And it's here in Gombe that Jane would turn the male-dominated world of primatology on its head. When Jane Goodall entered the forest of Gombe, the world knew very little about chimpanzees and even less about their unique genetic kinship to humans. Jane, meanwhile, took an unorthodox approach in her field research. She immersed herself in their habitat, painstakingly habituating herself to wild chimpanzees. And eventually she was able to get close enough to observe and document never before seen behaviors in wild chimpanzees, like hugs, kisses, tickling, food sharing, and even adoption. Behaviors that we see in us humans as well. She also noted malevolent behaviors like aggression and warfare and infanticide. Jane Goodall showed us in her own words, it isn't only human beings who have personality, who are capable of rational thought and emotions like joy and sorrow. Then, in 1960, Jane truly rocked the scientific community. She was the first scientist to document animals constructing and using tools. Chimpanzees were finding that perfect stick and then fashioning it so that they could fish for juicy termites deep within termite mounds. As humans, we like to place ourselves apart, above the animal kingdom. Before Jane, we thought we were the only species capable of using tools. And now we know that's certainly not the case. And we'll get into that more in our animal behavior module. But ultimately, by observing nature as a scientist, we learn about ourselves. Before you check out the video clips below, I want to make 3 important points here at the onset of Learning Activity 1.2. Number 1, good science always begins with lots and lots of careful and objective observation. Seeing nature not how you want it to be or imagine it to be, but seeing nature as it is, just as Jane did. She described a whole spectrum of chimpanzee behaviors. Our closest living relative, some 98% genetically the same as us, from altruism to spiteful vengeance. She observed nature as it is. Number 2, science is better. It is more likely to succeed when it is filled with diverse perspectives engaging in its pursuit. I think it very unlikely that a man would have been so successful in achieving that level of trust and that acceptance from a troop of wild chimpanzees that Jane achieves. And this allows her to be the first human to make these groundbreaking observations on wild chimpanzees instead of them just fleeing away into the forest. This is evidence that science benefits. We all benefit from diverse perspectives. More on that in this learning activity below. Number 3, if you truly want something, don't give up. Keep working. Persevere. As evidenced by Jane, hard work and maybe a little bit of serendipity, and you may just change the world. And even if you don't change the world, regardless, you'll make the world a better place just by being you.